Welcome to the Namibia Needs Me podcast, a platform where we take contemporary news stories and incorporate civic education into so that we are better able to create a conversation around what is relatable, currently happening in the country, to be able to share with you and have a creative discussion. Stay tuned. All right. So good day, Ethne. How are you?
Good morning, Janola. Well, and you?
No, blessed and well. Exciting times, very interesting stories we have lined up from last week or for this week. So maybe you can give us a little bit of a rundown, or should I?
No, I'll go right ahead. We're doing mining law reform.
Interesting story.
Yes, so that has to do with resource governance. How are we managing our extractive industries in a way that benefits everybody? Then we're looking at data protection and biometrics. And I loved when we were discussing this earlier this morning. Janola was like, "No, we don't have to talk about that. That's going to be boring." I was like, "No, but what about this and this aspect of it?" So we've got it in. And then we're talking about missing travel expenses in the office of the president.
Presidency, yeah. All right. So shall we take them in that order?
Go right ahead.
All right. So on the 2nd of September, the Namibia recorded a story about the much needed mining reforms that are currently underway. How government is trying to basically legislate interaction in terms of mining industry, also with the growing oil and gas sector and the new energy green hydrogen sector that is emerging in our country. So basically this story looks at the 1992 mining legislation and sort of wants to adapt it to present times, like things that we never really thought about in mining in terms of access to information and mining, how can rural communities benefit, just basically how each and every Namibian can feel proud that their resources are not just enriching, multinationals, but are trickling down to the poorest within our community. That's basically what this legislation is proposing. Yeah.
Great. So when you speak about access to information, for those of us who don't understand, what does access to information have to do with mining? Do you want to tell us a bit more?
Yeah, so basically a lot of times, and I know a lot of our listeners share this sentiment, that when it comes to mining and these big industries, the ordinary citizens are not aware how much do people own, how much local Namibian own, where are our resources going, how much of it is being exported, how much of it is being value addition is happening in the country. So basically part of the elements that this bill, in addition to corporate social responsibility that it will look at, is that information is easily accessible to people. People are aware in terms of who owns what, so that we know who to hold accountable.
Okay, so if we know who owns what, we can hold people accountable in the case of?
Like, for instance, licensing. Like maybe a new multinational is planning on getting a license for a particular extractive mineral. So that information should be open to the public so that there is no risks for corruption and, government officials selling these licenses and things like
because
that.
There are so many risks for corruption, Janola.
Yeah.
So a figure I learned on Friday was that about 88.6 billion US dollars is just removed off the continent illegally annually in Africa.
Wow.
And it's difficult to divide this up into countries because it actually doesn't have to do with countries as much as it has to do
sectors,
with easily transportable extractive industries often. So this is like diamonds, gold, obviously oil.
Yeah.
So it's very easy for money to be plundered out of Africa into offshore accounts of a few connected elites when it comes to the extractive industry. And we can't stop this or curb this or prevent this unless we have access to information such as who owns that company.
Yeah.
When you pay,
who is applying for a license, things like that. Yeah.
What means were used to apply for that license?
Where due processes followed. Yeah.
The money that you get from your license, where does that go to? Does it go straight into an offshore account through illegal backdoors, or does it stay in the country and help to enrich everyone?
Yeah.
So that's a big one, 88.6 billion US dollars annually. Another thing that just stays with me ever since Robin Sherborne's State of the Nation, State of the Economy address, is that we harp on about local content because we want to make sure that when these big multinationals come in, that they employ local people
Yeah.
for some things that we can be employed for. And the fact is, we don't have many of the skills needed, so we can't be employed for much other than, real low skill labor.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was critical of that because, like, that opens us up for political elites to actually take those contracts and, again, not necessarily use them in ways that benefit all of us. A more strategic way of making sure that our extractive industries work for us is to use accurate or strategic taxation to make sure that these multinationals are taxed appropriately in ways that enrich the whole country, not
and
just
that
a
local
small handful of people.
Yeah, especially so that the ordinary Namibian, in one way or the other, can be able to benefit from revenue collected from those extraction firms, right?
Yes.
And just while you were at that point, Anthony, one other thing that this reform looks at is both funding for like these emerging industries and the knowledge for that, and also bringing universities on board to be able to train our own people in those fields. Because I know a lot of times, because when I formerly used to work for the NIPDB, we really looked at some of these industries, and I worked closely with some of the stakeholders in those industries, and part of the plea was that we don't have the skills resource to be able to employ our own. That is why University of Namibia, I know specifically of UNAM NAST, I'm really not sure, about they rolling out green hydrogen programs. They even recently received, I think, 56 million for that endeavor. So that reform now also it's like an all-round approach to ensure that let the common Namibian benefit, so that more of what is extracted from our local resources are given back to the very community that it comes from.
Okay, so, and to end of the story, central is access to information.
Information,
We can't know where the corruption is happening or not if we do not have access to audits, procurement procedures, etc.
Yeah, and I think even on an important note is that because something like green hydrogen is a new industry, it is part of our energy sector, but it's a new industry, there was no real regulation of that. So even the fact that there are now going to be established rules of procedure help even to further not only mitigate corruption, but also that people are aware that actually this is how it's supposed to be done, so that even when civil society sees anything outside of what is prescribed, then they have something to hold government accountable for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so to our listeners, whenever you hear anyone advocating for access to information,
Yes, access to information.
Why does it suddenly sound strange to me? Support it. There are so many reasons why we should all be getting behind access to information, which is a bill that has been passed but is still not implemented, because it does take a lot of resources to implement this. But wherever you can, push for that and support those advocating for it.
Namibia needs me and Namibia needs you. This is the podcast for curious minds and people who understand that change starts at home. Don't be intimidated by your news. Follow it with me and Janola as we break it down into simple terms and ways that you can affect real change.
Yeah, on a very interesting note also is that our next story, coincidentally, also really focuses on information and the processing of such information. So for those that don't know, the Minister of Information Communication Technology, Honorable Emma Theophilus, submitted a bill 2 years ago, and it's called the Data Protection Bill. The purpose of this bill is basically to protect Namibians and protect their right to privacy, their fundamental right to privacy and safety of both their digital and or personal content. And that is basically the intention of this bill. So as part of that, this bill sort of prevents the state and or other third parties from being able to use our own information against us, or even being able to access, information of your child and things like that. The whole draft document is actually online. We will share the link to the draft bill in our description. So please, if you can, do check it out. Basically, this week she announced that the bill debate will continue in Parliament in this month of September. Personally, I'm actually very, very interested to see how many of our parliamentarians will support that bill, so that it then goes to the review stage, and then from review stage back to National Assembly, from National Assembly then to the presidency. That I'm very much interested for.
What is the main thing around this? I remember you saying earlier, this is maybe not an interesting story. And I was like, no, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because NTC, forced all of us to give them our biometric information about 2 years ago, and they had absolutely no legal foundation on which to do that. And in fact, they didn't. The data protection bill is now new. It's September 2025. Back then, all we had to regulate this type of thing was the Communications Act. And the Communications Act gave no legal foundation for MTC to just unilaterally decide, give us all your biometrics or else we cut off your data service.
Yeah. So
thoughts.
Yeah. So basically, my feeling was that because 8 months ago or so, I attended a workshop, and in this workshop, it was stipulated that the Communications Act actually gives government the right to collect our metadata. So metadata basically is that government has now the right to see that there is an SMS between myself and Ethne. That's metadata. But the content of that SMS, they need a court order to get. Or they can see your location. Or they can see who you're communicating with. But
how
they
does
can't
that
see the
make
specific.
you feel?
So that, as a person, to know that I'm being spied on or can be spied on is a very... I don't like it. And that is why...
And the thing is, it's a breach of the social contract that happens so subtly because it feels technical and inaccessible for people to engage with. Like, I don't get that stuff, so I'm just going to leave it. But what is happening is we gave our governments a certain amount of power to be able to look after us.
Yeah.
But
in the name of protecting us.
In the name of our interests.
Yeah.
But being able to, as you say, know who I send messages to and where I am at any given point feels like a massive infringement of my privacy.
Yeah.
And at no point was there a referendum or a push from citizens for our governments to have this amount of power over us. I don't know, it makes me feel very uncomfortable.
No, it very much does. And that is why this particular data protection bill is important, because it will draw the line between how much information can government gather enough to ensure we are safe and enough to curb criminal activity, but still not make me as an individual citizen feel like at any point these people could know where I am. And that is why you see a lot of politically affiliated Namibians now choose to communicate via WhatsApp, because they feel like their calls could be at any time retrieved and things like that. So this bill is very, very important. It touches home, because even for you as a listener, it could affect you. That is why, please, let's take interest. Let's talk about it. Let's keep the conversation going on our social media platforms concerning this bill come the time when it is tabled in Parliament. Yeah,
absolutely.
Namibia Needs Me is a civic education project co-implemented by the Hans Seidel Foundation and the Namibia Institute for Democracy. This project ultimate objective is to foster and strengthen democratic participation from all eligible voters and young people in the country. But I think our last story for the week.
Oh, but before we go, I wanted to say, so I was not sure whether MTC had a right to do this or not. And we actually confirmed, you and I, didn't we, that in fact, they didn't have any basis. At this point in time, any organization or institution is only allowed to ask you for your ID, your basic ID, your name and your address.
Yes.
No one has the right to ask you for your biometrics.
Yeah. Your facial rec, they cannot do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so CRAN officially dropped the biometrics requirement. And so actually none of us were supposed to go to MTC. Yeah. At the end of the day, they were way out of line.
Yeah. But like myself, my SIM card is registered, and lucky for me, I'd only submitted my ID copy. Yeah. But anyways, remember, these instruments are also there to protect you and I. So to an extent, I do agree that some of these things are necessary to avoid things like cell phone fraud and people using their MTC registered cell phone number to ask people their personal banking details to scam them of their money and things like that, which we have actually seen recently. Someone in my church community gave a testimony about how they were robbed of $8,000 just by giving a stranger their banking details over the phone. They didn't even need to give their ATM card. All they just did was give, the 4 digits at the bank of their card itself.
The 3 digits. Yeah. Never ever give anyone your CVC number.
Yes.
Never ever do that. Yeah. But I disagree with you, because that type of fraud is through communication, direct communication, and
No,
MTC
in
having
in
my
this
beat,
case,
my biometrics
yeah.
does not protect me from
Yes, so in this case, this person used an MTC number, reached out to the person, acted as though they are from one particular bank, and this person unfortunately fell prey to it. So if you have an instrument where bank cards are registered and you report this thing to the police, they can easily
that.
say,
You mean where
under,
SIM cards are registered?
yeah, when SIM cards are registered, you could easily go to the police and see who exactly, registered their SIM card with that number. And that is sort of how these things can be curbed. But this does still not allow the state to use our information as an instrument to be able to, not that they have, let's be very careful here, but to be able to, surveil
But
us
then
and things
again,
like that. Yeah.
how would we know whether they're surveilling us or not? Access to information.
Access to information, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
A lovely discussion. Thanks, Janola.
And I think maybe even on that note to access to information, moving on to our next story now.
Okay.
So our next story is very, very, very technical. The Namibian reported on the 7th of September that the Office of the Auditor General released an unqualified audit report of the Office of the Presidency.
So you stop right there for us who don't understand.
Yes.
What does an unqualified audit report?
Sorry, a qualified, I mean.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
So they released a qualified audit report. So in auditing terms, qualified means that there were irregularities or one thing or the other was wrong with that particular institution when it was
Didn't
audited.
you explain earlier that the bar is quite low? So for auditor's report to have something that
is qualified, it means that, a lot must have gone wrong with that particular organization and how it handled both its administrative functions and its financial functions to therefore get that report. So the Office of the Presidency, this was for last year. So they released an auditor report, a qualified auditor's report on behalf of the Office of the Presidency. And basically, for those of us that don't know, the Auditor General is the gazetted official office of the Namibian government, put in place to first of all, do internal audits for all SOE, state-owned enterprises and ministries.
Okay, so not regulate, but audit. And
But
audit
audit,
means looking at your financial records and seeing whether everything is in order.
Yeah, so they look at all your financial and administrative records to look if everything is in order, like were people hired properly, are computer systems intact. And they basically also do sort of risk assessments, like in terms of if you want to undertake particular projects, you can reach out to them if you are a state-owned enterprise and say, you want to undertake this this particular project, how viable is it? So they are there to just help state-owned enterprises act within legal and the financial frameworks as given by our existing laws. So in 2024, they did an audit of the Office of the Presidency, the previous presidency, and then they come up. Then they saw that there was 4 million unaccounted for.
So let's just get, is it 400 or 4 million?
4 million unaccounted for in travel, accommodation, and S&T
Okay, so
allowances.
4 million Namibian
Namibian
dollars just went missing and no one knows what it was used on in the Office of the Presidency under the headings of travel and subsistence.
Subsistence allowances, yeah. So basically what the article states is that the auditor could not find, first of all, even approvals for certain expenditures. There were no invoices for certain expenditures, although funds were paid. There were, in some cases, no quotations. Even though funds was paid, there was no actual quotation received for that payment to be made. And the report also stipulates that because there is no regulation in terms of credit card use for personnel under the Office of the President, it puts the auditor under a very difficult position because a lot of these expenses were made through the credit cards. You know? Yeah. So there is even a gap, even in terms of our financial infrastructure, that credit cards for executives are not regulated and that there's no framework for that. Maybe there are internal documents to guide that, but in terms of the law, there's no existing framework for that. So you could see that there's actually a challenge and that these amounts of funds cannot be accounted for. But I think the most important thing for us here to note is that, first of all, these funds should be accounted for because these funds belong to the Namibian taxpayer like myself. But even more importantly is that we are glad that a state institution was honest and open about the realities in terms of an office as high as the presidency, about what is happening and the irregularities as suspected. Yeah.
Fantastic. I've got nothing to add. That was a great summary.
All right.
Janola, you wanted to just remind everyone about the upcoming elections.
Yes, so please do note for our listeners that we have our 2025 regional and local authority elections. These elections will happen for both our local authorities and for our constituencies where we come from. For instance, I am under the City of Windhoek municipality, but I stay in the Katutura Central constituency. So come November, I will be voting for my councillor in my constituency, and I'll be voting for the 15 municipality councillors as part of the City of Windhoek. But maybe in your case, you'll be voting for your village council, or you'll be voting for your town council, but obviously still your constituency council.
What do you mean you'll be voting for your 15?
Yes, so the City of Windhoek has 15 councillors.
Oh,
but maybe where
will you be voting for 15 of them or only one of them?
So I'll be voting I'll cast one vote,
yes,
but to fill those 15
to
seats.
To fill one of the 15 seats.
Yeah. So maybe in the town council or the village council you are from, you don't have 15 seats. Maybe you have 10 or 5
15
or 7.
seats in the regional?
No, in the local authority.
In the local authority.
Yeah.
What, in the local authority council?
Council, yeah.
Okay. So you're going to cast one vote for your local authority council, which in Janola's case is the Khomas region.
No, it's the City of Windhoek municipality, yeah.
Okay. So you'll be casting one vote for your local authority, which in Janola's case is the City of Windhoek municipality.
Yeah.
And you'll be casting another vote for your constituency councillor,
yes,
which in your case is Katutura Central.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So like for those of us listening, maybe you're not from Windhoek, maybe you are from, let's say, Katima. Katima has a town council. So you would then be voting for members of that town council. And of course, the constituency you're from, whether it's Kabe South, Kabe North, or Mngube. So it's really just up to you depending on where you're from. Yeah.
You're going to vote for one seat in your constituency and another seat in your either municipality or village or town council.
Yeah. So when you're voting for your constituency, you are voting for a singular councillor. Mm-hmm. But when you vote for your local authority, your aim is to either vote for a political party or an association that could fill the seats in your local authority.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. But please let us show up in numbers. Let us get prepared. Already be looking at different manifestos. And please, if you need information as to what do the different political parties represent, link in the description. Visit the Namibia Needs Me website. We have all the manifestos, or as many as we could get that were publicly available, and we put it on our website for you. Please check what these different political parties represent so that you can vote intelligently. Yeah.
Have a lovely week further. Speak to you next week.
All right. Until next week.
Bye.
Don't be left behind. Don't miss out on a single week. Like this episode and subscribe so that you can stay abreast of what's happening in the country and the change that affects your life. We're also available on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and we have an excellent website with all the resources that you need.